Historical Society meeting. This is not a merit badge test as to who is the hardiest in our historical society or town, but we congratulate you for coming out. And tonight we are very fortunate indeed to have a presentation about the history of our library that Ann Kidd, our librarian, and Ellen Smith have so kindly and generously, and maybe towards the end with regrets, signed themselves up to do. Ann has been our librarian here for nearly 13 years and has been a trustee in Hardwick, the library there, for some 24 years, as well as having done librarianship work there. And a native of New Jersey, graduate of Ithaca College in New York State. I asked her what she majored in, and she said psychology, which turns out to have been a very good subject to deal with all of the types that, like us, that have come into her life here. Ellen Smith has been a trustee for 20 years. I don't know if she's been awarded the pin yet, but and she tells me tonight that she hails from North Dakota, and so that explains why she is here. With via the Bronx and other places, and Southern Connecticut College, State College, later a history major at Clark, and has really delved into this. As I noticed last week when she was practically standing on her head with a camera trying to photograph the label of a piece of furniture here. I'm sure we'll hear about this later. Before we go actually into their talks, I would just like to mention to those in the viewing audience that you are seeing this presentation courtesy of Channel 11 and Paul LeBlanc, who has come out to this, many other events, and we're grateful. And his assistant, Steve Caputo, whom I know as marrying Sam from a play long ago, Little Abner. So. Anyway, thanks very much. Now I would like to turn it over to Ann and Ellen, the history of our library.
Thank you, Darrell.
Yes, thank you.
Now what are we going to do for lights?
I will go hit the light, see if we can start the show.
So, but we certainly would like any input anyone can provide, because there's an awful lot of information out there that I'm sure that we haven't picked up on. Jeff Fisk was kind enough to share an awful lot of information, and I probably don't have anywhere near enough time to go over it all, but some fascinating things that Ann and I had not discovered. We're starting out with Once Upon a Time, there was a Ladies' Library Association, because prior to 1879, there were private libraries in town, and one of those, perhaps the best known, was the Ladies' Library Association. And you can explain where this...
This is a little package of tea, and it actually has tea in it still, that we assume the Ladies' Library Association had a little event and perhaps a tea party 100 years after the Boston Tea Party. So we have this in our possession.
And Jeff has a note here that comes from the North Brookfield Journal of March 17th, 1875, that the Ladies' Library Association have a large and well-selected library in their rooms in the Walker Block. And it says tickets for books, $2 per year or 50 cents for 3 months. Library open every Saturday afternoon and evening. So that's the only mention that we have. Now this is another item from this Ladies' Library Association. The date is 1875. And again, Ann can explain cataloging in those days.
So apparently what they did was print up a catalog of the books that they owned at that time, and people could borrow the catalog, bring it home, look over the books that were there and then go to the library. I'm not sure about the ladies' library, but in this library, you'd go and ask the librarian to retrieve the book from behind the desk. So there was no such thing as a card catalog initially. And this is one that we found.
Now this is quite brittle, so I didn't want to open the pages to photograph any more than just this first one. But in the back of this little catalog, the last page is an addendum, and it's on a page that folds out so that it's twice the length of this page, and folded it back in and closed the book. And I wish that I could photograph more of these things, but again, it's fragile. The Appleton Library, Daryl, you said that it was established in 1859, I believe, at the church. So that would be another example of a library in town, but private in nature. The Walker Block, probably everybody here knows of it, and I'm going to just I have a laser pointer I want you to all know, but I'm not going to use it. This is the Walker Building, the Walker Block so-called, which originally I assume was a separate building. I noticed now, and I drove by it yesterday, that there is a connection between those two. But the library, the ladies' library, was located in that building. I don't know, it didn't indicate where exactly, but in 1879, this is just a close-up of a piece of that same photograph. In 1879, the first free public library and reading room was established, and we know that was on the second floor. Whether it was in the front of the building, I'm not clear on that, but it was in 2 rooms. And it was interesting because after or at the town meeting in 1879, the Ladies Library Association offered their collection to the town as the basis of a free public library. And apparently on several occasions, the town accepted the gift. But then others came forward to contribute toward this public library with gifts totaling $2,000. The high school graduates and their friends were among the contributors or subscribers. I think they used the term subscriptions. In the 1880 town report, Theodore Bates, who was elected chairman of the first board of trustees, went on at some length to talk about the fact that the trustees had been waiting for the collection from the Ladies Library Association, and the ladies had changed their minds. It seems that they were not pleased by the fact that others intruded on their gift. It was the impression I got from the way he worded it. So they had waited a while, thinking that the ladies would rethink their position and come around, but eventually they sent a letter indicating that they had withdrawn their offer. So the library usually is referred to as having been established with $2,000 in donations from the high school and from a couple of other people. So it was interesting to wonder what happened to the Ladies Library Association collection. And in a later town report, I think 1896, if I remember correctly, it mentioned in one line, and probably purposely just in one line to sort of dismiss the Ladies Library Association, that their collection went to Berea College in Kentucky. And I'm just going to read this. Berea College still exists. And on their website, just read this section. Since its founding in 1855, Berea College's spiritual foundation, quote, "God has made of one blood all peoples of the earth," unquote, has shaped the institution's culture and programs. Founder John G. Fee, an ardent abolitionist, asserted that Berea was founded, quote, "in the midst of many privations and persecutions, to preach and apply a gospel of impartial love," unquote. And then it goes on, guided by this inclusive Christian message of impartial love, Berea's founders held fast to their radical vision of a college and a community committed to interracial education, to the Appalachian region, and to the equality of all women and men from all, quote, nations and climes, unquote. And it goes on from there. We don't know the connection between the Ladies Library Association and the college, but perhaps that's a topic for another day.
It's a mystery to be
Fascinating.
solved.
Theodore Bates, and some of what you're seeing here, you can just look over our shoulders and see on the walls or wherever. Theodore Bates was Mr. Everything in North Brookfield during this late 19th century. In addition to being the first chairman of the Board of Trustees and long-term member of the board, he was involved with the new waterworks, which was celebrated just 2 days after the opening of the library, or the dedication, I should say, of the library. He was also involved with the railroad, so he didn't have a whole lot of spare time.
And I just want to jump in here with the, when the library was first opened in the Walker Block, it was, as Ellen said, started with $2,000. $500 were given by scholars and citizens who were the North Brookfield High School members and friends, past and present. $500 was given by T.C. Bates, Theodore Bates, as we just saw, and Alfred Batchelor gave $1,000. So that's what made up that $2,000. And they talked about having excellent accommodations being fixed up in the Walker Block, which sounds nice. And they opened on Thanksgiving Eve in 1879, and they had 1,300 volumes at that time. So, and a short time later, they say, I think it's about 5 months later, they say, they have 100 persons attending the library and reading room a day. So that's fairly significant.
How big was the town?
That's a very good question. It was close to 5,000. I think it was around 5,000.
Population in the late 19th century and today's population are pretty similar numbers, but there was a significant drop-off in the period in between.
1898, there was a protracted labor strike at the shoe factory.
Right.
They lost a lot of employees. The town population at that point had broken 5,000 and then dropped to a little over 3,000.
Right.
So.
Had a decline, a big change.
And there's a quote I just wanted to tell you. It's from one of the early reports of this library. The young men who so generally are making use of it are not only removed from the temptations of evil so numerously set about them elsewhere, but are storing their minds with useful knowledge and information and acquiring habits of study and self-reliance. So the library brought this on.
So from 1879 on, the library operated on the second floor of the Walker Block. And then in 1892, on the date here, September 16th, 1892, the following letter was received by the trustees of the library from Erasmus Haston of Elm Street. And actually, I'm going to hold off for a second here and talk about a little bit about him. Erasmus Haston's an interesting individual who was orphaned at an early age. His mother died, I believe, when he was 2, and his father when he was 6. He hailed from Belchertown, and he was raised, they say, by a family named Works. He married in 1847 Abigail Whiting, and a lot of people in town named Whiting. And the wedding was in October, and she died, I believe, in June of the following year. There are no details as to the cause of her death, so we'll just be speculating. He married Elvira Shedd in 1849. And the portraits that you see are the portraits here on the walls, painted by a Boston artist, W.W. Churchill. It was felt appropriate when this library opened that the benefactors' portraits hang, as far as we know, where you see them now in this alcove to the left of the entryway. Mrs. Shedd, Elvira Shedd Haston, was a native of Springfield, Vermont, and as we said, the wedding took place in 1849. The Shedds both, the Hastons, I should say, both lived long lives. Erasmus Haston was here for the dedication, but died not long after. The dedication of the library was in September of 1894, and he died in March of 1895. Mrs. Haston was, I believe, about 90. We're not quite sure. From the way this is worded, someone wrote 1907 on this notice. It mentions that her husband's death occurred 11 years ago, and so the time is about right. She would have been about 90 years old, and was active apparently. Mrs. Haston had been able to walk and ride out until she fell in her room when preparing to retire 5 days before her death. So she lived a long and active life. Do we know where she lived when she died? We don't know what newspaper this is taken from. This is the Haston homestead, which Erasmus Haston purchased, we think, prior to his first marriage, and he built the house that is there now. He owned a number of acres. We have tax books here.
38 acres.
38 acres of this land that's off to the left here, on the corner of Arch and Elm Streets. And this is what you call a map like this, the three-dimensional map that's up in the upper lobby there. And this is the property, and the farmland would be over in this area. The Hastons, this picture, as Ann can explain where this came from. They had two children, Martin and Arthur. This is a daguerreotype, I guess you'd call it, which must have been done about 1855 of the second son. Unfortunately, both died at very young ages. Ann, you found this where?
Well, I found it in the file cabinet, actually, of the library.
It's a small.
It's in one of those little frames,
Almost like a
small wooden
locket?
frame that locks and opens up, as you can see there. So you can stand it up.
And this is.
And it says, "See other picture,"
We don't
and
know.
there's no other picture that we can find, which is very frustrating.
We were wondering how common it would have been for someone to have a child's photograph done as early as 1855. Photography had been around for some time, but how commonly this would be done and where such a portrait would have been done, those are, again, questions perhaps for another time. This photograph and several of these other photographs are from a book of North Brookfield photos done in 1885. So there are some things, such as the library, that don't appear in these photos, and other things that look pretty much like they look today. The Adams block here on the corner, and this building around the corner. This is where we go grab sandwiches now when we're working at the library after hours. The Union Congregational Church, dated from, I think it's 1854, is it? Daryl, can you help me on that? 55, 1855. And the site that we're currently occupying at that time looked like this. This house still exists, block from here on Walnut Street. was moved from the property in 1893, I think it was, and reassembled. Some interesting details of that. This would be from the Main Street angle. These two photos are courtesy of Mindy Tripp. She and her husband John own the house, and it's over, as I said, over on Walnut Street. Let me read you the letter that Erasmus Haston addressed to the Board of Trustees on September 16, 1892, addressing actually the chairman, Mr. Bates. Dear Sir, conscious of the great good our free public library and reading room has accomplished in our town, and realizing the desirability of better accommodations and greater security for the valuable books and for the portraits of our prominent fellow townsmen, and desirous of manifesting my respect for and goodwill towards the people of this town where I have spent upwards of 50 years of my life, I hereby tender and submit, through you and your associate trustees, to the inhabitants of the town of North Brookfield, Massachusetts, the following two propositions, leaving it for the people of the town to determine which of the two they will accept. First, I will give and convey to the inhabitants of North Brookfield, Massachusetts, for the purpose of paying for the building of their free public library and reading room, the sum of $30,000, on condition that the town shall pay or cause to be paid to me or to my wife, as long as either of us may live, an annuity of 3% on $30,000 or $900 per year. Second, or I will give and convey absolutely to the town of North Brookfield, Massachusetts, $20,000 for the same purpose set forth in the first proposition, but without any condition. Please communicate these two propositions to your associate trustees and through them to the inhabitants of the town of North Brookfield in such manner and with such recommendations in the premises as the Board of Trustees may deem best. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and seal this 15th day of September, 1892, Erasmus Haston, Elvira Haston. So the town had a choice to make. Jeff's notes go on to indicate that on September 30th of 1892, at a town meeting on a Saturday evening, September 24th, 1892, the town voted to accept the first of the two propositions, and in addition to that, to raise and appropriate $10,000 to be turned over to the library trustees to be expended in securing a suitable site and doing the plans for the proposed library building. The vote also authorized the treasurer to borrow the $10,000 to be repaid over 10 years. So those were the terms of the agreement. This again is from that three-dimensional map, and where's the cursor? So this is the library plot. When the town purchased the property, the price paid to Ezra Batchelor, who owned the property, was $8,500. The house was auctioned and brought $600. The barn was sold separately, I forget, $100, something like that. And the shed went for $10.
And the trellis, they mentioned
the
trellis as well. It must have been a very outstanding trellis.
And someone from Spencer was hired to move the house to its current location, and it was cut in half. So the back section, this is kind of, these pictures sort of distort the shape of the house, but the back section was moved separately. And Board of Trustees, some of these names, Batchelor, of course, is a familiar name in town. And I'm not sure how his name is pronounced, but the Reverend Tweet was the pastor of the Catholic Church, St. Joseph's Church, at that time. So it wasn't all male Board of Trustees at the time, but in later years, and I forget which town report I was reading, there was one female trustee. There were 9 trustees originally, and up to some point, and Daryl, I don't know, it's always been 7 in my experience. I don't know when the number changed, but somewhere along the line. We haven't stumbled on that piece of information. The dedication of the library occurred September 20th, 1894, and this looks like not a little library, but big library on the prairie to me, this photo. It has this picture has an eerie quality about it. This is from the dedication booklet that was printed, and there's something very eerie about that.
And we should say that the Hastons gave their $30,000, and then during the building of the library, they were approached by the Board of Trustees because they had some additional costs, and they said that they wanted everything they wanted to have everything done in the best manner possible, and they would pay for the extra cost. And that extra cost turned out to be $4,000 more.
So it was a significant.
So, and the
addition.
Hastons came up with that $4,000. So.
And there are records of how that money was conveyed
Gradually
to the
paid.
town. The town reports detail that. It's quite interesting. Maybe we should take a broader view before we get into this dedication ceremony. In 1894, do I have the right sheet? Just to set this in a broader context, we're 1 year beyond the exposition in Chicago that was the talk of the nation at that time. But we're also in some pretty tough times. 1893 was the time of the Panic of 1893, and while the World's Fair was being built, banks were failing left and right, making the people who were organizing the World's Fair very nervous. We finally did wind up having quite good audiences for the fair, but this building was being constructed as the World's Fair was taking place, because construction took just a year, 1893 to 1894. Grover Cleveland was president at the time.
Some other facts are
information of the day,
the average wage in the United States was around 20 cents an hour.
which makes $30,000 seem all that much more
Quite a
impressive.
bit. The average life expectancy in the U.S. was 47 years. And in 1894, 95% of all births in the U.S. took place in the home, which is an interesting thought as well. Rosemary looked up a lot of these for us, and here's another one. Most women only wash their hair once a month. And they used borax or egg yolks for shampoo. So imagine all of that.
So while we're celebrating here in North Brookfield in 1894, a couple of things that made the history books, Coxey's Army, which a lot of us studied, but the Pullman strike was even better known. Those events occurred in 1894. So we had a cause for celebration, a couple of things actually in North Brookfield, this and the waterworks a couple of days later, but in the larger context, there were some tough times out there. This is not a contemporary photo, I must admit. This was a color picture that I cropped and made into a black and white picture. But it suggests, I think, because of the steam train, they didn't come in freight cars, but the dignitaries who came to the dedication ceremony arrived by rail from East Brookfield at the depot, and I don't know I'm really not sure of the year of this picture, but I don't know when the last steam train was, probably in the 30s or 40s, I suppose. But they came into town on the train. They were met there and taken on a tour of the new waterworks and up to the Bates Observatory, and then treated to lunch or dinner, they referred to it, at the Bachelor House. And I was a little bit surprised when I read the menu for that dinner. because one of the things that was listed on the menu was ketchup. It's a dreary, dreary menu. They serve ham and chicken and macaroni and as scalloped oysters. The only thing that had any sort of suggestion of flair to it at all. Where did we find that?
That was in the dedication booklet, I believe.
We'll have to show you the menu, because the menu is dreadful. But the Batchelor House was originally a private home. It was purchased by the Batchelor family, and additions were added in the back when it became a hotel. It stood about where, it's Cumberland Farms, exactly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the building that's visible on the right, is that the building that's still on the corner of Maple Street? We were wondering.
Yeah, that building used to reside where the town hall is now.
Oh.
And they moved that building down to the corner.
That's,
A portion of the side lot to the left is where the Duncan building is now. The Duncan building wasn't there yet.
right. Yeah, there's a brick, in that other photograph, a brick building in between the Adams, or the Walker block and here, and then we have the open space. The program for the dedication indicates that the dedication occurred at the town hall, but it didn't. And this is a little bit sketchy. It was held at the rink. Now this is the model of the Batchelor factory that's upstairs, and someone put a card in there and you can't read it. It's very faded. It says skating rink. It said that they accommodated 2,000 people in the rink, which was the same capacity as Mechanics Hall. And then there were people who couldn't get in. There wasn't so much interest and not enough room for everybody. But I read elsewhere the mention of a warehouse. Perhaps this was being used as a warehouse at the time. I really am not sure of that. But that the Batchelor company decked this out so that it was a very attractive environment for the dedication ceremony to take place. And this is the booklet. As I said, it says the town hall, but they couldn't have accommodated more than about, I think the town hall would have held about 500 people.
More
or
like
so.
3.
I thought I had read somewhere that when they did the Old Wilderness, or whatever it was, that they had 530 people in there, and I was very surprised by that number, because I didn't think that.
Standing room only.
Yeah,
I didn't have to eat.
Yeah,
That's right.
I didn't think it would hold 500, so. This is the program with the dreadful picture. The principal speaker was G. Stanley Hall, president of Clark University, Senator George. If I remember correctly, his middle name is Frisbee, which probably didn't sound funny in 1894. Also made a notable address, and he spoke a lot in that address of Rufus Putnam. People talked about that in later years. He was a librarian of Worcester, was there for the occasion. Now, Stephen Salisbury, I think, seems to me was, I don't know if he had attended or not, but that was another big name. And the speeches and things went on and on and on. You can look at the book, but they didn't
That's right, they went on so long that the last 3 speakers didn't
give
have
them.
any time. So they just
They-
handed theirs in, they didn't
It
get
was
to speak.
very, very long speeches.
But this was such a fabulous thing for the town. It seems from reading everything. They closed the school, so all the school children came to the dedication. And it was just a tremendous deal. People coming in on the train and all of these famous speakers coming.
It
It
must
was
have
just
been quite a
amazing.
week, because as Rosemary pointed out, 2 days later, they had the dedication of the waterworks, and all kinds of ceremony attended that event as well. So they
Right.
must have been exhausted after,
It's quite a week.
yeah,
For
by
Norfolk.
the beginning of October they were. I'm just going to run through we can look at a lot of these things because we're sitting here, but this is a magnificent building. Elizabeth, where is it here? Elizabeth risked life and limb a few months ago to stand on the railing outside the library door and make a rubbing of this design, which was translated into the banner that's up over the desk, into stationery. It's absolutely gorgeous in that dark red. But this tablet has the date 1892, which is when the gift was presented to the town, as opposed to the opening in 1894. The building was dedicated that day in September, but was not open until a week later to the public. The building material is described as Milford granite, which I think may well have been quarried in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. They refer to it as Milford granite, but the actual quarry is in Hopkinton, and it doesn't really show up well. This is the column, which is the polished surface, and this is the rough stone. And Ann and I were at FlexCon last week and saw some of the architectural details in their building, and we're looking at the similar stonework, both polished and rough surfaces. And we have, well, within the last 10 years, both of the dormers on the building have been restored because of water getting in behind those and freezing and thawing. Both were not in very good shape. This is the dormer that faces the street, but the back one was also restored. And this material, where's this cursor? This material, I don't know if anybody knows what that is.
Terracotta.
Terracotta. It's a little too high up to put to it. But again, it harmonizes with the red roof. These are incredible copper cornices, would that be the term? And again, with the lights on, the color of the roof is not as dramatic as it actually is. I just walked around the building, obviously not too long ago, you can tell because the icicles are hanging off. Spring Street side, speaking of copper, the roof itself, not just the cornice, but up above that, I've never been up there, but I'm told that that's sheathed in copper. And there was a pretty serious problem, I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, with a leak that developed that brought the plaster down at that end of the building on the second floor. And knock on wood, it's been okay lately, but that's a different roofing material, and you can't tell because you can't see it from down below. The view from the back, the sign, the no parking sign or whatever that is, the date of the fire escape is, we were talking about that the other day. That was not original to the building,
No.
obviously.
It's the 80s, I believe.
It's a full 3 stories back there because of the extreme slope of the lot.
Was that door added, do you think, that fire escape door, that funny metal door?
It must, unless it was a window, it was probably a window that was enlarged.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like it, yeah, might have had a pair.
Yeah, this
Those were
is new. Yeah, the entryways were added at some later
And windows
point.
are blocked up on that lower level. One would be where that building is, and you can see where that's blocked up
Oh.
over on the right.
Over here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the children's room. And now this has lost its label for some reason. Huh, that's interesting. No, I take it back. It didn't. There it is. This is the fireplace right behind the screen there. And there was a reference that I read to how beautiful it looked with the gas log burning.
Oh, glad to know it
Would have
burned
been
once.
nice to feel it tonight.
Yeah. So it was operational. This is probably my favorite picture. It's too bad that we have this soot or whatever it is. This would be the chimney that serves the furnace, I assume. But it brings together all these angles of the roof, and there's also slate here, this is the back of the building, there's slate on a couple of the vertical surfaces as well. which is kind of interesting. It's visible in the front there as well.
That was a water closet. It was off.
Oh,
That's
up
right.
that's the
up Great
upstairs,
Hall.
that's right. Let me go back to that. Right here is there was a lavatory, quote unquote, on the second floor, right over the first floor. It's now a storage closet, but when the second floor was operational, that did have a bathroom facility. This is the north wall, the far end there, that faces the former church subway, and this is the tower that's been out there for some years. This is the wall that would move out or be removed, where the addition, proposed addition would be added. Again, here's the slate used also on the side wall. This slate is, red slate is quarried in Washington County, New York, which is across the border from the Poultney, Vermont area, which is an area where a lot of slate originates, but the red slate is found in this one county. And normally, when you see red slate, it's part of a pattern in a roof. You don't see all red slate roofs all that often. Obviously, you do sometimes because we have one. But I found this photograph in a book that Anne purchased for the library, so we'd all be experts on slate roofs because we were dealing with leaks every other week, it seemed, for a while. And this is in Foxborough, Pennsylvania, and it identifies the source of the slate as Granville, New York, which is in this Washington County area. The building behind it also has red slate, and it just reminded me a lot of the library because the stone of the church is a similar color. The next slide is what the library would more or less would look like if it didn't have its red roof. And I think the difference is dramatic. This is obviously a very impressive building. This is a private home, and you can see over here on the left, they were working on it at the time the photo was taken, restoring the roof, but it just is kind of bland.
Red was a good choice.
By comparison. This is a quote from the booklet that went with the dedication booklet. Decorating of the building is of an exceptionally high order and was done by Stenberg and Company of Boston and Worcester. So the painting and that sort of thing. And I guess we're guessing that the color of the walls was something like it is today. Exactly what color, we're not quite sure. The stained glass, Redding and Baird Company of Boston. And we have stained glass and more stained glass. These first two slides are from what was originally the ladies' reading room, where the office is now. And they're my favorite stained glass windows in the building. But we have many and varied patterns and colors. It's a little bit bigger one. This is the one behind. I can't remember now. You can't tell because the light's not coming through them. I took these in the late afternoon. They're in this room. Whoop, hesitation. And that one is down at the end of the stacks. It's the large window. And just some, we're sitting in the rooms where these are located. Payne Furniture provided the furnishings, and I'm guessing that the clock came from Payne's. I looked and looked and looked for labels, and finally found one on the bottom of the drawer of the table that's in the periodical room now. So that was part of the original furnishings, an intact label, and at the bottom there's the cursor, in pencil is a 5-digit number. That's the table. We took the magazines off the top and out of the drawers and turned the drawer over to photograph the label. And when I was upstairs, I found this remnant of another Payne's label on the large table, but not as large as the one in this room, that's in what was the trustees' room over the office. It's a table similar to the large table that's in this room, a little bit smaller, and you can see the outline of what the rest of the label was. They describe the furniture as of artistic design. And this chair, its mate is, Mr. Smith is sitting in its mate. This one has some structural problems right now, so it's tucked safely upstairs. The seat's been replaced, but the back is probably the
There's
original.
also the remnants of one up in the tower stairway.
Ooh, the tower stairway. We didn't even cover the tower stairway in our presentation. It'll be I wonder how many of these the library had originally. I suppose over all these years, the safe. This is the safe in the what was referred to as the records room. This is the assessor's office. That part of the library is referred to as an area where town records would be likely be stored. That's a walk-in safe. This safe is on rollers, and this is in the stack area of the library. We opened it up the other day, and there are a few treasures in there, including the accessions book. This is one of the radiators that are here and there in the library. Washburn and Garfield provided the heating systems, a coal system at that time. And I just included this. Everybody that's been in the library a few times knows that upstairs there's a model of the Batchelor Company and that was built for the Chicago World's Fair and exhibited there. This identification tag was somewhere. I don't know if anybody knows any more about it, but it does indicate the size of the floor space is 4.5 acres. And I don't know if it's true that at one time this factory was the largest in the United States. I've heard. I don't know if that's legend or...
Could you back up one slide to the
I can do that.
to the radiator?
One more.
If you notice up in the upper left-hand corner, the little circles and buttons,
Yeah.
when the building was built, it was built for electric and gas because they had both available, and the electric was fairly new. So those are the light switches for the upstairs. They don't work now, they've been bypassed, but they're mother of pearl inlays on the buttons, and you don't see many of them around like that. But the chandeliers up in the upstairs are both gas electric. They will do either, and they were set up in such a way they could either use the gas lights or they could use the electric lights, whichever they found to be more economical.
Now, they started off with gas.
Right.
And the fixtures, well, we're looking at them here, and I didn't include them in the presentation. The fixtures that are on the walls now they have candles in them, but they were electrical fixtures.
Right.
So what did they have for gas lighting fixtures in this building?
Well, the upstairs is the only thing I can speak to because I know for sure is the chandeliers that are in the museum are all gas.
So they probably would have had
Yeah.
something similar here and
Right,
they've been
ideally it would have
replaced.
come down somewhere where these lights are now.
Yeah.
But the piping is all still present in the attic
Mhm.
upstairs where it runs out to each one of the chandeliers and
We did read that at one point, and I forget the year, the library was closed for a month because of problems with gas
That's right.
odors, reopened and then closed a second time for at least a month. And the gas tank was finally dug up and the building aired out for this period of time. And then apparently that solved the problem. But that was sometime in later years.
Right, and they do say that electricity was installed in 1914,
Oh, 1914.
so
they must have electrified the gas fixtures.
they must have,
Now, somebody needs to help me with the date of Christ Memorial Episcopal Church. This picture was just a leaf that was inside the book of 1885 photos, and it's not part of that book. Does anyone know the date?
It's 1890 something, I don't know, 4 or 6 or something like that.
I was wondering if it slightly predated the library or post-dated the library.
There's a plaque in there, so
It-
10 church this Sunday and clarify.
It's very close, but that's what the church looked like before, originally.
Yeah,
What
the
happened
steeple
to it?
collapsed in 1938, and it wasn't
Was
a
it
result of
dur-
the hurricane,
it
it was
was
a
not?
result of poor repair.
Uh-huh.
And the steeple collapsed and fell into the vestry directly beside the sanctuary. And they had already been discussing tearing the
See.
building down because of the poor repair that the building was
Oh.
in. And before they could do it, the steeple collapsed, and then they took the main sanctuary off and left just what we have left
Yeah.
over here.
That's not a very long period of time. If it's built in the 1890s and lasted only until,
Yeah,
The
the
1930s.
congregation was not very rich, or a very poor
Mhm.
congregation. They
Mhm.
couldn't keep up with the
it's a
The,
handsome building.
maintenance.
Um,
The downfall was the fact that the steeple isn't wood, it's stone. And because of its height and its construction, it didn't fare very well to New England winters. So
Mhm.
the ice would get in the joints of the mortar and work the stone out, and it was a constant battle from the time it was built right up until when it collapsed to keep it put together.
Now, who was just telling me that the stone is over, oh, it was Jeff Fisk who was telling me, stone from the church is over on the corner of Grove Street and Central Street?
Yeah,
I-
across from John DeBarber.
Yes, yes, and I never knew that until last night. So now I have to go look when the snow melts. The library hours, 9 to 9, and this is mind-boggling. We're still trying to puzzle through this. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., closed for 2 hours so that the librarian could eat, and 6 days a week. So did the librarian work 60 hours? We don't know. This is a beautiful, and we should have probably kept this out. This was in the safe, or is in the safe. The accessions book, and that's the first page of it, the first entry. I'd love to be able to write like that. I guess we all would. It's exquisite. There are 3 volumes, I think, in the safe, and then we have other volumes, later volumes, on display. And I focus mostly on the building. We'll talk more about the time from then to now, but the 1895 town report takes a look, and I'll enlarge that, takes a look at 5 months in the old rooms, as they're called, in the Walker Block, as opposed to 5 months in the new library, the attendance differences, and then they pulled out morning attendance. It sounded as if there was an issue of whether the library should be open in the morning, whether it was used enough, so that they were giving these figures to indicate that it was well used in the early hours of the day. The number of books taken out increased quite dramatically, as one would expect. And
I can
Yeah.
tell you, since you're on that date, there were 5,128 volumes at that time, and they had 10 daily newspapers, 38 weekly periodicals, and 17 monthly periodicals. And that's a lot of newspapers and magazines.
And they
I
were
really
from-
think this was the reading room at that time. And I think people really just came in, read the papers, and that's the way they got their news. Sat in here and read the paper, and they did make mention of, they had many papers from the United States and even Canada and England. So it was a different time.
broad view.
Could you go back to that last sentence? So, am I reading that correctly, that there were 473 a day in the mornings? Or,
That's the way it's worded. Number of persons visiting the library and reading room. So it meant that a third of all the people in town came to the library on a daily basis.
It's amazing.
Well, it was pretty
Actually, the whole town,
Right.
in the new library, a third of the town in the old. Yeah, the figures are rather astounding. So the total collection in this period of time, the total number of books was about 5,000. And that was an issue, if you read the town reports of that period, the town appropriated $1,000 a year to support the library, but that was really to operate the library. And it really didn't include purchase of books. And Theodore Bates at one point donated $500.
Right, in
was it?
1897, he donated $500 for books, and that was the first time there was a book budget, really. Up until then, there were many books given, it seems, not many, but some books given to the library. And the books that they had, they were constantly rebinding them. They were rebound and repaired. That was the major way of keeping their books. So I think they built up a classic collection, or they were working toward that, and then wanted to keep them in good repair.
And each town report mentions that in those early years, that there's concern about people mishandling books, and it would mention the cost of rebinding and repairing books, and that, you know, if people were more careful, wouldn't have to expend that kind of money. Just a thought that occurs to me, that we didn't talk about discussing the location of the library. One proposal before they decided to purchase this property was to relocate the cemetery that's on Maple Street, Maple and Main, to Walnut Grove Cemetery, and that this would be a less expensive option. And it also, there were health concerns because the village had now moved up to this part of town. Originally, the cemetery was on the outskirts. Well, when town moved up this way, suddenly the cemetery was right in the center of town, and there was concern about disease and that sort of thing. And you often wonder whether somebody who was saying this didn't have a stake in having it there anyway. But the one argument that was used for that site was that it would be less expensive, and the money saved could buy books. So if they had located it there, more books. And this just kind of bridges the time period sort of symbolically by looking at the monuments that, you know, this building has sadly seen many wars. Library services have changed along with the passing years, and we hope that we'll be able to demonstrate how library services have changed as we move forward with this project. I found this in the safe and flattened it out as best I could. It was tri-folded. I don't know if Axel Crucell is a relative.
John's father.
John's father?
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I was surmising. A letter written in 1950. Apparently there was an art school that used the building at that time, and the school gave an offering to the book fund of the library in exchange for, it says, for the few hours the school uses the facilities or space of the furnace room as a studio. Doesn't that sound cheerful? During the cold days, and it was what they were saying was that I think it was $60 they were offering, and they hope that would be acceptable, paid quarterly. And the letter indicates that they really weren't using the building all that much. So this is accompanied by a check for $15 that we're hoping to continue with the
What is the
relationship.
signature, do you know? Could you
Um,
whose name that is?
I can't remember what check deposit and savings bank. It was Mrs. the name is up at the top there. Mrs. Edgar Burl. But that's her name down below. Looks, I don't know, looks to me like Nell or something, but I'm not sure.
They left some things down there too.
Oh, so there are remains
There
of the
are.
North Brookfield School of Art. And Tom Ducasse indicates that he's going to do some crawling around under the floors. I was not willing to go to that extreme, but just a few things here. The roof looks great in those pictures, but there's more to the story of the roof than what meets the eye from the ground. When you go down in the basement, some of us have been down there lugging books up for the book sale and things. This is the bathroom is just out here, so you walk into the furnace room and look overhead, and this is the wider view of what you see. There's some issues. And this is that nasty closet that used to be full of stuff, and it's been cleaned out, but it's
That's right below the front stairs, the big
literally,
granite
it's
stairs.
literally
It is.
below
You can see them
stairs.
now.
Some years ago, during the time I was on the board, those stairs were reset, and I recall when they were done, I forget the name of the firm that worked on them, but they were surprised to find they had settled, and that was the reason for calling the company in. They found that they were just sort of hanging there. They hadn't been put in properly, so there wasn't anything holding them up, and the leakage from the stairs is a lot of the reason why this closet looks as it does. But that's, if you're trying to photograph something really dreadful looking in this building, until Tom crawls under the floor, this is going to have to do. But heat is an issue downstairs. The children's room is we call it without heat in terms of the
It's very, very cold down there.
radiators anyway, and this is up close to the ceiling, so even if it produced heat, it would be not too good for your feet. So where do we go from here? Well, hopefully to here. This is the proposed addition to the library. This is where the library currently ends along this wall, and the proposed addition would head in a northerly direction. The new main entrance would be in this area. The existing entrance would be maintained, but this would be the primary entry point. And a lot of people have seen the plans are here. The various floors, these are not etched in stone, as they say. The interior space could be rearranged, but this is a proposal to use all three levels of the building for the first time in quite a long time. The second floor, the upper level, would extend out over the existing book stacks. There would be a floor laid there, and it would extend into the new area. This is really a discussion probably for another time to get into the details of the building. That's where we'd like to go, and how do we get there? Well, here's our target. That's where we would like to be. And we're doing a lot of fundraising at the present time. These photos have been on display for a while, but we had one of the nicest events, I think, probably since the dedication of the Haston Library on October 16th, the first annual, we hope, Harvest Supper. It didn't rain, the candles didn't blow out. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. That's not spaghetti. Everybody who sees it says, oh, you had spaghetti that night. No, that's, what is that called, raffia? To wrap the napkins. We served dinner across the street. And it's Chris welcoming people. The sun came out just at the right time. Everything was beautifully decorated. And Chris Bennett, who's been on the Board of Trustees a few more years than I have, was our hostess. And this is Chris's daughter Vivian, who helped out. And we had one of the best meals anybody's ever eaten. Everybody commented on what a wonderful, wonderful meal it was. And then we followed the lighted paths, and I meant to include the girls who did such a wonderful job setting those along the path. People came over here for dessert, and Bob couldn't bring the apple crisp over from Christ Memorial fast enough. We were thinking it was going to collapse into the basement, and then we'd really need to do the project quickly. It was a very popular place. And we had wonderful entertainment by the Bliss Pond Players. It was just a terrific evening. So that was our kickoff of our fund drive. And we're going in a lot of different directions, and one of those is that the children of North Brookfield, the elementary school children, are conducting a year-long penny drive. This container is here in the library, but every Friday there's a collection of pennies, and a couple of times they've done nickel collections, and the total is approaching $800 now, and that's a lot of pennies to be counted, to be brought in, to be counted, to be unearthed from people's basements and closets. And Margaret Hanson, who is the president of the PTA, deserves an awful lot of credit, because Margaret came in here the other day. It was our turn to count this week. So Margaret brought in some pennies, and about 2 hours later, she came back and said, "I can count those." And off she went with our pennies. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Margaret. It's really a wonderful part of the drive. We've been celebrating lately with wonderful banners that I'll identify our friend Elizabeth Hyder made for the front of the library, and people noticed that they went up. Tom Ducas got up on the ladder one Sunday afternoon and put those up. Made me a nervous wreck. I have the photos to prove it, and my hand was shaking while I was watching. They come down in bad weather. Don't want them to be ripped off the building, so they're down right now, but they'll be up again. Hopefully we get a stretch of good weather. But it really they look wonderful in the front of the building. We have a little glitch here, fortunately right at the end. I think we skipped an important slide. Let me go back. Yes. Dates of note. Isn't it strange that it would have hiccuped right there? Oh, and it's done some other weird thing here. It's not supposed to look like that on the bottom. But, two things have happened to these slides. I don't know. Well, anyway. So the special town meeting is Friday, March 4th, and the special election, March 7th. Mark those on your calendar. Let's go home and fix this slide. And thank you very much. We have a lot more information, but it's getting late.
It is getting late. Ellen, thank you so much. Ellen,
Very
as
welcome.
you can see, has done a lot of climbing about with her camera and a lot of research and looking through all kinds of things. Thanks.
Thank you to Linda Barron for loaning the projector. Thank you to my former colleague Joyce Nelson for the laptop. I had never touched a laptop until 3 days ago, and it all worked. So that's a good thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a first for the Historical Society. Yes, we'd like to thank you for giving us 110 plus years of the library and intimations of what's to come for the next 110 as the library is renovated. And, so pay attention to the newspapers and the town votes that are coming up to make this all possible. Thank you very much.
We do have some artifacts over
Yes,
here.
we do.
that,
On the back table, there's some artifacts, including, I never got to talk about the brick.
Oh, talk about the brick. There's all kinds of things to talk
Which is
about.
much to say. But in 1918, there was a new librarian that came in and big changes happened. They moved the children's room to one room, and they did a whole lot of things, including covering 250 bricks with brown paper. I just read this somewhere. And I said, oh, I know those bricks, because we
everywhere.
still have them. So this is also on display in the back table. So please look at everything we got.
Why did they
And
cover
thanks
the
for,
brick?
they were for bookends. Thank you
Oh.
for asking. I
Yeah, I was
forgot to
gonna
mention
say,
that. Yes.
There was a
And this
crowd
is maybe one of the last 2 bricks we have.
desperately trying to get rid of those darn things.
Established, have it in a special spot. and
That's right,
rather than
now that I
the
have read about it in the history.
Giving a new meaning to bricks and